Everybody, today I want to talk about something that happened many years ago, way back in the 19th century. I'm talking about 1871 precisely. There was an event that happened around that time that is called the Great Fire Outbreak of Chicago. Apparently what had happened was an overnight incident, like a fire outbreak came up and it consumed most of the buildings, businesses around Chicago as at that time. It was long time ago, and Chicago used to be the where to go to the business, wherever it's happening and all of that. And after the event, everything getting consumed, getting burnt, most businesses were folded up. Most entrepreneurs became, discouraged and all of that, and they all wanted to leave Chicago. They all wanted to leave Chicago, looking at New York, that New York was the next best thing. And since that was the program that was playing in their mind, everybody started walking in that direction. But there was one person that stood out in the crowd that made a different decision from what others were making. The name Marshall Field. You probably have heard of the name before. Marshall Field was also a business owner. Then he was partnering with some group of friends. He was a business owner back then, and he was building his business, and he was also the victim of what happened in Chicago. And while everybody was making up their mind to move on, Marshall Field stood on the remains of the ashes of the company and everything that he had that got burnt in Chicago. He stood there looking at the ashes and all of that, and while everybody was walking on, they looked at him. And he told everyone that cared to listen that he's not leaving Chicago, that he's going to stay right there in Chicago, and he's going to build one of the biggest, retail business ever in America. And it was like a dream. It was something that is far-fetched. It was something that, others could not just play out in their mind. And they just could not, know why he was talking like that. And they didn't believe him anyway. So they walked away, but Marshall Field stood there looking at the ashes. He built an empire in the place of the ashes that was staring him in the face. He just, within weeks, he started making calls. Marshall Field was, if you've ever used the phrase, the phrase that customer is always right, that came from Marshall Field. He was the one that started that. He created a business that was customer centric, always out there, money back guaranteed, all those things that are being practiced today. Most of the things that are being practiced today in the business world, in the retail market, Marshall Field started it. Now, he kept seeing a marketplace where everybody will come to, and before you know what's happening, he started his business all over, staying right there in Chicago, and built a 13-story building, for a building that was completed in 1907. The entire money that was spent at that time was worth $8 million. $8 million. Now, as at the end of I'm talking as at early 90s, when the building was getting completed and all of that, the business of Marshall Field and Company, the business of Marshall Field was making as much as $25 million annually, $25 million annually, and in retail they were making over $30 million. Now, in a year, the business is started after the fire outbreak was making as much as over $60 million. Now, the business was making as much as over $60 million. Now, there was $60 million in the ashes that he was looking at. Now, what I just want to say today, disaster does not define destiny, it is decision. Now, never look at a disaster and never look at something you name a disaster and use it to define your destiny. It is your decision about what has happened that defines the destiny. You get what I'm saying? So most of the time in life, people walk away from, they look at the experience that they have had and they conclude on the matter, but borrow the wisdom from Marshall Field and know that fire sometimes comes to refine, it doesn't come to destroy. Fire sometimes comes to refine, and when you're being refined like that, it's just a matter of sitting down, looking at it, it's not about what was destroyed, it's about what is left. And if you're quiet, you're sensitive to the fact that there is still so much that can come out of what you have presently, you'll be so surprised.